and we'll talk a little bit today about micro-credentials and badges so you have a good idea about what they are. And then in the end, I'll tell you about what we've done so far at SUNY Oswego about creating our own. So do either of you know much about micro-credentials?
I know what they are and that they exist, but I don't know how we get one here.
How we create one here?
How we get one started here. Who has to approve it? What are the mechanisms for getting a transcript or what other places where students want?
Good. Okay. I'm not sure we have the answers for all those questions yet, but at least I can tell you what I do know, which will start our conversation. Yeah. Well, and then we can go together down there because kind of I think it's really cool, and I think we as an institution have an opportunity to really throw out a lot of different micro-credentials. I really do. So I guess I'll start at square one.
I would like that.
Yeah, because I'm sorry.
I know
Josh,
a little bit about it. You might know more, Josh, but I just kind of have the idea of what it is, but it seems like there's a lot of interpretation that depending on where you're at. So.
Yes, definitely. So what I'll do is I'll talk about.
We're not recording.
That
was my fault.
It says pause recording, stop recording.
Oh, we are recording. Never mind. I am so tired.
It's okay.
Just continue.
It's the last day, John, the last day. So, okay. So SUNY started looking at finding out what micro-credentials were in the fall of 16, and then they put together some task forces. And so what I'm going to do today is review kind of how this all began, what they found, what we found, because so far I've been on both of the committees I'm going to be talking about, and then also finalize it with kind of where we are at SUNY Oswego. So, so here we go, I guess. Okay. There we go. So just to set the stage a little bit, I think we all are aware that today's educational landscape is changing. More and more employers are not just looking for college degrees, they're looking for verified skill sets of their employees. And at the same time, colleges are attempting to achieve their own enrollment goals and better serve their students. So as a result, more institutions of higher education are embracing the micro-credential to try to bridge this. They're sometimes referred to as digital badges, and the controversy a little bit around that continues to go on. So we're going to talk more about that. John and I have distinct opinions on that, so we'll make sure you know about it. And hopefully we can kind of frame what happens here at Oswego. And so micro-credentials are not just a way for us to kind of credential students for our own purposes, but they're meeting business and industry needs. And it's really trying to put that connection to the work world very much in the forefront. So a couple points to consider. IPED's data shows an increase in non-degree education awards and certificates from under 600,000 issued in 2001 to nearly 1 million in 13-14. And this is really even before the micro-credential movement really started going crazy. And in 2016, the National Student Clearinghouse reported that part-time college enrollments dropped for the third consecutive year. The rising tuition costs, the growth of MOOCs, and you know what MOOCs are, right? And other forms of informal alternative education. There's regulatory challenges in for-profit education and the swiftly changing economy of not to mention major demographic shifts, such as the boomers retiring and millennials coming of age. They like to call it the have it your way consumerism, or otherwise known as the population is now buying songs rather than albums. So they like to take smaller pieces, right? That has created a tsunami in higher education. What that means is that the value of a higher ed degree is under fire as it stands, a traditional higher education degree. So we've all read the stories attacking the value of a degree to the work world as it's compared to the corresponding high student debt. Google, in fact, has decided that college GPAs, and I quote, college GPAs and transcripts are almost worthless in hiring. And following those revelations, the company is hiring more and more people who never even went to college. Instead, they're viewing alternate credentials as more indicative of the skills they want in their employees. In a 2017 survey by UPSEA, which stands for the University Professional and Continuing Education Association, and Blackboard, asked those between the ages of 18 and 40 who had started college but didn't finish why they'd stopped attending college, and a significant number of them cited it wasn't worth it, suggesting that the return on investment in getting a large traditional degree wasn't there for them. Another report in 2016 by Pearson and UPSIA says the traditional bachelor's degree might not be suited for some of the millennial generation, and other types of learners may favor an educational credentialing system built around recognition of the learning outcomes in the form of badges or certificates of competencies. Another example within industry, there's been a movement toward a more competency-rich culture at companies. Employers are adopting this culture in their own intranets, saying instead of this is Joe Blow, IT analyst, they'll say this person has expertise in this, this, and this. So when you go in there to search them, you type in, projectors, and that person will come up. So that's an example of using competencies at the work world. So we're seeing not just traditional credentials and certifications are desired by industry. Companies are seeking a way to identify skills of applicants and then verify them, because they get our transcripts. Our transcripts say Business 100. Joe Schmo got an A. Well, Oswego's Business 100 has these components. What about, SU's Business 100? What about this person's Business 100? Your employers don't know how to extrapolate information from that transcript. And what they want to do is verify a skill set. So there has been a rise in those private sector micro-credentials like coding academies. You've probably heard of Udacity.
So you can teach coding skills.
Yeah, and go back a couple of years. You have the Microsoft certifications, right? If you had a certification in Excel, an employer would know that you know what to do with Excel. So these are examples of micro-credentials. And often they deliver need-to-know content to working professionals just in time and in small units. That's key. LinkedIn recently launched more than 50 learning paths in March 16, linking sets of lynda.com courses, which we have, with assessments and supports. And they're awarding certificates and badges for completion. They're coming after the world of higher ed, frankly. These professionally focused learning goals require those smaller, simpler, and more applied learning programs. They're shaped by industry needs and are less expensive than degrees and shorter than traditional college courses. So we have an opportunity. We look at it as an opportunity, a golden opportunity actually, to serve individuals, whether they're new to education or returning professionals seeking different credentials or learning experiences. So in some ways, micro-credentials are very similar to extension programs, which have been around for ages. We've had certifications. We've had all these kind of non-credit, kind of very applied pieces. So what's different? Academia has, and by the way, your continuing ed units have often nurtured strong relationships with business and industry already. So they have all these things, but it's been siloed. It's been separate from the more traditional kind of academic side of the house, credit side of the house. Now, micro-credentials provide an opportunity to break down the silos and create a more seamless suite of educational components, which integrate both non-credit and credit together and directly connect credentials through degree pathways or to degree pathways and employment. So higher ed can provide cutting-edge teaching and learning that prepares students for the workforce, as well as gives them the credentials they need to continue their education and advance in their careers. They're perfect for lifelong learning and professional development because let's say you got your degree a number of years ago and now you're working at a small company and you find yourself in the position where you have to manage the website and the social media of your company, which happens in a lot of small companies. Are you going to go back to college to get a new degree? Probably not. You're going to want something, but you want something that's very, that has integrity, that is very meaningful, that has, I want to say like academic kind of prowess and integrity to it. And so you might come back from a micro-credential. You might not want it as credit, you might, but so this is an example of how micro-credential can actually work in a bunch of different ways.
That's a good question. Just to framework it. So is it how long would it take to get one of these micro-credentials?
The fun is that we all get to design it to what we think is most appropriate. So an industry should help. Well, they shouldn't just help, they should dictate.
Depending on what content is there, and then that will say if it's important. I mean, can it be as short as a few days, that kind of thing? All right.
Yeah, it could be like a few-hour workshop. That's what it takes for you to get a certain learning objective. But the key component is that those are identified so that somebody can go back and verify what it is that you just learned.
Okay.
Is SUNY thinking right now that we would be delivering others' credentials more than we call them
is where SUNY is kind of focusing our efforts, because, and I was just going to say, there are all sorts of for-profit institutions out there, or companies, they're not institutions, I wouldn't say, that are out there honestly really trying to crack this nut. LinkedIn is one of them, yeah. And I don't mean to put the dastardly mustache and the horns on everybody, but at the same point, and I'll say this, they're not held to the same standards as we are. They don't have the same content experts that we have. I mean, we have this opportunity to blow this out of the water if we can be innovative enough in higher education to kind of change and pivot, I guess. So private sector companies offering micro-credentials lack consistent quality in learning design, assessment, and outcome certification, and another big thing, inconsistent instructor qualifications. So they are fast and nimble, but often at the expense of quality. Higher education can offer credentials with a foundation of solid learning and assessment by validating student learning outcomes within the micro-credentials. So to do so, we must innovate and develop a foundation of credibility for sound educational micro-credentialing to ensure strong academic rigor, continuity, credibility, organization, and a common language, so we all know what we're talking about micro-credentials. So in March of 16, the SUNY Provost at the time, Alexander Cartwright, convened a group of individuals spanning all the different types of colleges in SUNY and all sorts of different roles. And the charge is there ahead of you. Review the current landscape, examine what's already happening across SUNY, and then review the policies that may be in the way of creating more micro-credentials. So, like, I was very proud to be part of the people there, continuing education, because, and extended learning, but because often we're not considered for those types of roles, very siloed to the side. So you had presidents on the committee, provost, faculty governance was there, student governance was there, registrar, business offices, institutional researchers. So it's a great way to show that the silos weren't going to be at play here. What we found in the work that we did, here are some of the benefits of micro-credentials. They motivate students toward completion of a credential or a degree program by highlighting those attainments, progressive attainment of competencies. So you can embed a micro-credential within a course. An easy one would be, think about a tech ed course. It has OSHA 10-hour safety training embedded in the course. Why aren't we giving that credential to our students as they pass through their curriculum, right? Let's say they don't continue on, something gets in the way, they don't finish their bachelor's degree, they have something they can show in the work world for what they've learned in the classroom. They earned it. That it supports academic and industry partnerships, that makes sense, because foremost, and it's easy for us to forget it, because in academia often we build it and assume they'll come. We have to start with industry in mind. Is this meaningful? Because if it's not going to give somebody a leg up in the work world, why are we doing it? Provide more specificity to potential employers about those skills and competencies learned. They supplement an existing degree program with complementary skill sets. I'll give you an example at the end of what we're doing at Oswego right now that Schema is putting together that is going to supplement their own students' skill sets. It's not something they're going to change a degree for, but they're going to add it as an option. That ladder from non-credit to credit, especially with returning or adult students who might not even consider pursuing a credit program. If they start out with non-credit, they get the learning bug, they see they can be successful, they might end up going into credit. And it can go from a standalone credential to a degree program and provide those short-term, immediate competency development opportunities, otherwise known as professional development.
Can I ask about that?
Yeah.
So if it's a credential that can be converted to a degree, so is it if you have enough?
Not necessarily to a degree.
Not to a degree, I'm sorry, to credit. So if you have, in theory, or if you had this credential, this credential, this credential, that actually adds up to the
If it's
equivalent
designed that way, yes.
of this class, and this would be 3 credit class that you would have done in a piecemeal fashion.
Yes.
And maybe there's a menu, so it's the buffet kind of approach.
And it has to be approved by
to some classes,
Yes. If that's the way it's going to do it. If what we're trying to do, one of the aims we're doing when we design the micro-credential is to allow that pathway into a 3-credit course or the equivalency. And it would need to go through governance and everything. But you can design it that way very intentionally.
So you think about even the gen ed requirements, I mean, there's always has to be this critical math in the English, and that has to be there, although there's flexibility for some of the others.
Yes.
So I can envision it might be designed perhaps that.
Yeah, it could be. Now, again, don't forget, what I think is very easy for us with micro-credentials to do is to not remember the employer piece. And that is what should guide you. We already have the academic piece. We think it's something important, and we just so. A list of them.
They like employer priorities.
You know, this is a field that is just exploding right now, and every college and for-profit company, some not-for-profits, but other types of organizations and colleges are in this field, and they're all trying to create things. So
I was
even if
thinking
you
about
try to catalog one today, tomorrow it's out of date.
the real project that we are wanting to do in the next year is this. We started calling it certificate in global engagement.
Mhm.
We have enough components on this campus, we feel,
Mhm.
for a graduate,
Mhm.
but I'm just curious about this aspect, for someone to be able to badge themselves, micro-credential themselves. It doesn't have to be called global engagement,
Right.
it's just the term we're
Yep.
using. It doesn't exist yet.
Yep.
We have a model. But it would be nice to know if industry has identified
Yeah.
something that
Yep.
we can look at and see how that would fit. That's what
I think the first thing you do in that case is you go to somebody who might value that for an employee, you know, and then ask them to give you feedback about what that design looks like. Because here's another important piece. What you're hearing me talk about today is how it has to be important, you know, the employer has to be in there. Doesn't mean that we can't combine experiences and create something and then put a badge on top of it. You know, there are this is a spectrum. Micro-credentials are actually on a spectrum. And so what we're talking about is the micro-credential that I would say is academically sound, it is has learning outcomes, has relevancy to the work world. It is at the end of the spectrum that is the most complex and most mature, most closest to a degree, right? Most close to a traditional academic program.
Mhm.
There are, down the spectrum, you have, you can get a badge, or which could be seen as a micro-credential, for attending 3 guest speakers in the IMOS series, right? And that's like a campus citizenship badge or something like that. There is a spectrum, and where my comments are today focusing on is the academic version. But most of this does still apply to the other types of badges and credentials. Does that make sense?
It does. It's just sort of just important to know so that we begin a process. We know who the audience eventually is going to be.
Yeah.
There are majors on this campus that screen global engagement, others
Yeah.
don't. But our thought was that someone could merge. Our initial thought was with a bachelor's degree, but it doesn't have to be.
Mhm.
If they do enough things and are evaluated as such, they could get this micro-credential regardless of their major.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or if they ever complete the degree.
Yeah, and you know, we have such a spectrum at the academic community.
But both are okay for us to think about now.
I think so.
Saying
I mean, it would need to be a little more mature in terms of exactly what you want to do, because we have different types of ways we can acknowledge those kind of things, right? I mean, there are minors, there are certifications, those all stay. Those are all part of this landscape. And so what the right label is for it
That was my next
might
question.
emerge as
You
we
can talk
find
about
out
the
more about what
mechanics.
you're trying to do.
Are you talking about the process? Eventually?
Yes. Yep. Okay. Sure.
I just want to say, Hector, we had to mute you because there was a little bit of background noise. If you want to say something, you can either use chat or just click on the unmute button and unmute yourself.
So the Provost group that I was talking about before met and we discussed a couple things, of which I kind of quickly highlighted. What I urge you to do is go to this URL at SUNY system, and the short URL, by the way, is just suny.edu/microcredentials. But there is a task force reporting recommendations. This Provost task group was recommending to the Provost certain actions about microcredentials. It also included a definition. We're going to go into that in just a second. But if you would like to read that, or there is a shortened summary version there on that webpage, you can certainly do that. We have information I'm going to quickly go over now. The first one is the definition of a microcredential. So there it is. Despite national efforts by Lumina and others, I'd say globally, to establish universal definitions around microcredentialing, there are inconsistencies. SUNY has settled on the following definition. Microcredentials verify, validate, and attest that specific skills and or competencies have been achieved and are endorsed by the issuing institution, having been developed through assessment-based, non-degree activities, and are designed to be meaningful and high quality. They differ from traditional degrees and certificates in that they're generally offered in shorter or more flexible time spans and tend to be more narrowly focused. They can be offered online, on campus, or via a hybrid of both. Characteristics of microcredentials are that they may be non-credit or credit, which we talked about earlier, and they can be at the undergraduate or graduate level. They can take the form of digital badge. They can be specifically recognized by certain industries, which validate and attest to those industry-specific, highly sought-after competencies. They can highlight competencies earned as part of a credit-bearing program, like the example I said before with our OSHA. That motivates students to persist and distinguishes students from among prospective employers. They can serve as an entry point to a degree program or as a standalone credential or one complementary to a degree program. They need to be designed to meet market needs, though, and should be informed by current data from the current appropriate markets and align with relevant industry and sector standards that are inherently more flexible and innovative than academia.
So this is from SUNY?
This is from
They're
SUNY.
saying this direct.
Well, these characteristics are part of what we put forth to the Provost when we did our research. And what you'll hear is that SUNY did adopt all these. So this was part of our recommendation that was adopted.
And that was the FACT2 Task Force?
No, this is the SUNY Provost.
Oh, that's something different.
Task Group, yeah.
So really, employer, not just, you know, a
Not
nod
just-
to what we think employers want. Employer
That's right.
identified, specified skills.
And they suggest, they really promote working with your continuing ed, workforce development folks who already often have employer relationships to help kind of connect with that industry. So some common types of microcredentials are, they include digital badges, stackable credentials that align with learning outcomes in a credit course and together can build into a credit course, your example before, MOOCs, and the more traditional microcredentials that have been there for years and years, such as licensure, certificates, and any other industry recognized credential. So it was important to know that the Provost Task Force operated under some guiding principles, and these were, again, forwarded and adopted by SUNY. So this was our recommendation. Number one is that academic quality is paramount. If we are going to, in higher education, try to take on this microcredentialing movement and be part of it, it has to be paramount to differentiate ourselves from the for-profits that are out there doing the same thing. And faculty governance participation is required for credit offerings, but that's no different than it always has been. Anything credit has to go through governance. Microcredentials are initiated locally, meaning SUNY's not going to come and tell us what to do, which is good. They're developed and approved according to local campus policies and procedures consistent with our own campus mission and strategic goals. They're designed to meet market needs, as we've said a bunch of times, and should be informed by that current data from appropriate markets. They can provide opportunities for industry and education connections. That makes sense. They are inherently more flexible and innovative, like I said before. They should be portable, which means they should be able to be moved and used in other ways. And they should be stackable. If they're designed right, you should be able to stack them into something bigger. Research shows that the best microcredentials deliberately integrate the following components, starting with the 6 dimensions of quality described by ACE, the American Council on Education, in their quality dimensions for connected credentials. It needs to be transparent, both for the benefit of a prospective employer, because remember, this is meant to be meaningful in the employment field, and the student, clearly defining competencies. And it should highlight all possible connections from this credential to others, like a path to earn credit or to another credential and so on. It needs to be modular, which means the stackable piece. It needs to have portability, which ensures the credential has value locally, but also nationally and or beyond. So developing them with industry partners means that the skills identified have a specific benefit to the potential employer. Credit microcredentials stack and articulate into other credentials And a non-credit micro-credential with an articulation agreement to credit-bearing work brings the value of that academic advancement. It should be relevant. We talked about that. The meaningful piece of this is so important. It has to help people advance their educational, professional, or life goals, and it has to add value to them. Validity. It has to be verifiable. This is where badges come in. Micro-credentials and badges are not exactly always the same thing. A micro-credential is a unit of learning with competencies and skill sets less than a degree. A badge is a way to signify, right, visually, virtually, that they have this micro-credential. So a badge is a tool. It includes, if it's digital, it includes metadata and links to the institution to establish both relevance and validity. So for example, people say, well, tell me how a badge is used then. If John takes this session today, he learns about micro-credentials. I have a curriculum, you know what the learning outcomes of this are. He gets a badge. I designed the badge so that he then can upload it to his LinkedIn account. He goes off and searches for a job. An employer can go and look at his LinkedIn account because he provided it, gave him permission. They click on this badge to find out what the heck has John learned about micro-credentials. You open it up, it brings you to SUNY Oswego's page, so they know it's legit. And it comes to all of the different learning outcomes. And so they're able to know, John really does know about micro-credentials. And by the way, Credly is trying to, if we work with them, which we're trying to settle on a contract with them, they're eventually going to be adding in an opportunity for its students to post an example of their work. So that employer can even go in and see what the example of that work is digitally. And then there's equity. Micro-credentials can be used as a means to provide a pathway into for-credit coursework or job advancements. And therefore, equity means those students pursuing a micro-credential need to be treated the same way that the students that are pursuing a degree should be treated. They should have the same supports campus-wide and so on. Other best practices. Tuition. You have to be clear about exactly what we're talking about for costs of micro-credentials. If it's a credit micro-credential, this is common sense, but sometimes it's not right up there for people to understand. It's the same cost as any credit, right? Same thing we're under. If it's non-credit, just like any other non-credit, you work up how much the costs are and you set a price on it. But the key is that they have to be made public and easily accessible. Transfer. The articulation of non-credit credit needs to have work done ahead of time. If we're hoping that somebody's going to take something and eventually lead them to credit, then we should pave that way and make sure that we all know what we're doing before they get in the system. And of course, if it's credit, it needs to be conducted through shared governance. Transcripts. You asked about transcripts before. Issues of transcript development for micro-credentials and industry-recognized credentials, as well as non-credit to credit pathways, need to be addressed to facilitate the portability of them. It's a nut that hasn't been completely cracked yet. New initiatives have been launched by a variety of colleges and universities across the nation for the purposes of developing a comprehensive student record, or CSR. If you haven't heard about it yet, you will. It is a digitized format that aims to expand beyond the traditional chronological transcript. So instead of getting a transcript printed on our letterhead, you're going to see people are going to have a digital transcript that has their whole life information on it, basically, because they have this new blockchain technology, which is supposed to be the securest of secure data, and it can follow you throughout your life. It would instead document validated evidence of their learning outcomes, competencies, and related learning outside of the classroom versus kind of the traditional transcript we talked about today. So that's kind of in the future. That's probably the direction we're going. But we need to figure out right now, if we're going to mobilize a micro-credential, what is it going to look like on our own transcript?
Pause for a second. So this idea that per SUNY, that each campus can come up with its own micro-credentials. Thank you also for the clarification that the badge refers to micro-credentials. First time I actually heard that. So thank you.
Well, because not everybody agrees with me.
Well, it makes sense when you say that the badge refers to a micro-credential. That makes a lot of sense.
It's the tool to visually represent the micro-credential.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we're coming up with our own micro-credentials, maybe that's where we're at now.
Yes.
Will there be like a curriculum committee? Will there be a
You're jumping ahead, yes. You're right where I am, and I'm glad you're there. I'm glad you're there. Because yes, I am recommending to the Provost that we stand up a group quickly, because we just signed a contract with Credly, and that we need people from across campus to come up Oswego's.
Credly, if I understand you present on this one before, it's like a portal through which, say, a LinkedIn, there's a badge on
Yep.
there from SUNY Oswego, or say it says global
Credly
engagement.
is
Someone
the badge.
clicks on the badge,
Yep.
and it goes to a verifiable place
Mhm.
that explains what our
Credly is the program that enables that to happen.
what our description is.
Yep.
That badge doesn't get onto that LinkedIn entry unless Credly issues it.
Now, unless we issue it.
Right.
They're like the intermediary, the
Yeah.
company that actually runs the technology to generate the badges.
That's sort of, we prove it. but
We set
would
it up.
issue it.
We,
And then-
Right.
yeah, award it.
We award it, and then the students would have to go to their LinkedIn account and post it, but the student has access to that.
And they're
Yeah.
issued this digital badge by the company.
But they'll never know the
Well,
word Credly.
we issue it, but they're the provider. It's sort of like they print it digitally.
Yeah.
No, just to be precise, I think this will come up. I get
Yeah.
confused. We currently issue transcripts.
Yeah.
Our campus prints them on approved paper, boss. Those are issued, they're approved by us and issued by us.
Mhm.
If we approve the contents of a micro-credential, but the graphic, the digital
We also
graphic,
create the graphic.
We create the graphic. They're just providing the digital transmission of that
The
and
pathway
storage.
to enable us to do it.
I think that's something I'm looking ahead to
Yeah.
flesh out.
Yeah.
Because that's confusing. It sounds to me like Credly's issue, even though I understand exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
And then the question is, what if Credly gets hacked? What if they're called?
Well, it's sort of like Blackboard in a sense. They're providing
I
a
was just gonna
service.
give Blackboard as an example. Yep.
Blackboard,
Just like
it's
Blackboard.
different. Blackboard is a course that says you're on Blackboard taking a course that is a SUNY Oswego course.
Well, and Credly is offering SUNY Oswego badges, so they're a provider of the service of generating the badges, and there are plugins in Blackboard, so it could even be used potentially for gamification and issuing badges. and
But
things.
Credly's not gonna ever create anything. We create it
Yeah, I
all.
didn't say that.
Yeah.
Issue,
Yeah,
right? We would approve.
and we issue.
So, right, if I wanted to put a badge onto LinkedIn, could SUNY Oswego do that without a Credly?
We could, but it's not as easily because we don't have, well, we actually do. There's the Open Mozilla project, but that's been kind of stagnant for a few years. So there are some open standards, but Credly accounts for something like 95%.
I'm not against it. I just think whenever we bring in this
Yeah,
a corporate interface between our integrity and how you're viewed, I think it's fleshed out. Then if a student can get that badge from us directly, the question, why wouldn't they? Why does the
Well,
company need
Because
to do
what
it?
we're gonna do, we don't have computer designers to create this and make it happen and to also
And they have the
enable the
integration
levels of information.
with LinkedIn and everything
Which makes
else.
total sense.
Yeah.
But really,
But it's something
their issue.
It's
The
a new
lay
area.
person is
Yeah.
not gonna know the word Credly.
They get, as soon as we go, student who graduate.
They will know that we gave
Get
them a
it from
badge.
us.
Yep.
And just Credly's behind us.
Yep.
And they'll be probably given instructions on how to add
How to
their
access
LinkedIn profile, or there'll be
Yep.
some way of doing
The other two parts here, best practices, are to have marketing clarity and transparency so that policies, procedures, and so on, everything applied to micro-credentials are accurately described and people know what they're getting into ahead of time, including any pertinent financial aid information and faculty and staff involved in the process. It needs to be included in our academic catalogs and college websites. Again, what we're trying to do is continue to have our academic integrity and the weight of our academic work be reflected in these micro-credentials. They are not the same as a for-profit, micro-credential out there. It has the full weight of this campus. Program approval, therefore, all credit-based academic offerings are already governed by our regional accrediting agency policies. But each institution has their ability to require that same standard for non-credit or create their own, and is encouraged to develop their own standards of achieving that to, again, continue to keep our threshold for quality high as an academic institution.
Can I ask you a question about the financial aid? So is this something that financial aid would cover?
No.
How does that work?
Not
I
right
didn't
now.
think so.
Not right now, and that was one of the things we identified, and you'll hear what we kind of have recommended that SUNY do, and SUNY's taking up the banner on. So we created these 10 recommendations. I'm going to go quickly on these because I'm not going to, I've already described what they are, so I'm not going to kind of go any further into this. But we had 10 different recommendations, which summarizes what I have already gone over. And the only thing I want to pull up is the first one is that the provost should encourage and support the development of micro-credentials. And SUNY is. SUNY really wants colleges to do this. They've kind of looked in the tea leaves. They think that this is where we all should go. And so they are encouraging it. They're not trying to get in the way for the most part. There are 5 other recommendations here as well that I'm just going to skim really quick to make sure. Number 6, we do not have to get SUNY approval to create a micro-credential. And they don't want to have to, right? There is a minor approval process for a new minor. There is some undergraduate certificates, what is that, capital C certificates that are coded and so on. Those all have existing structures. They're not putting a requirement that SUNY needs to approve these. However, they do want us to go to system program review with them just to ensure we're not kind of, overstepping a line here. So that's all they are saying that they want to consult with us, but they're not saying we have to approve things. That's important. And we also recommended that the provost look at those SUNY-related policies, and to your point, Karen, that they should advocate for micro-credentials to be eligible for state financial aid. Okay, and then finally, the last one, number 10, is that SUNY needs to report system-wide. So even though we're not putting them through governance, they want to know how many are we offering, what are we doing, and that would require us to have CIRRUS, institutional research directors, update CIRRUS so that we all can report on them, right? So, so those were our recommendations, and what ended up happening is the SUNY chancellor, query, and provost kind of have shifted in the meantime, but what happened when we have our interim Grace Wang and we have Chancellor Johnson, they all have embraced the idea of the micro-credential, and they've continued this going forward. Such that in January, the SUNY trustees Academic Affairs Committee endorsed everything basically that we put forward in that report. And not only that, but they charged the chancellor to create 4 working groups, 1 on policy financial aid. So again, we recommended that they advocate for financial aid, and the chancellor had charged them to do so. And the second one is about readiness and assessment, which is something that kind of the FACT2 group kind of did to create some tools and information. And then the third is data reporting, which ensures accountability, transparency, and portability. They're engaging institutional research officers and so on to create those reporting structures for CIRRUS. So it's happening. Those people are meeting and they're trying to create it. And fourth, transcripts, transferability, and portability is that they've got campus registrars and other staff engaged to create a system-wide approach to digital transcripts, which also include micro-credentials.
This is coming, man.
So it is happening.
Wow, I don't
Yes.
think that the majority of the campus knows about it,
No,
honestly.
they don't.
So how is
It's moved pretty quickly, and
Yes.
that's why people are giving presentations.
Yes, that's why I'm here today.
Get
Start the conversation
micro-credentials
here.
from all over the system, follow them together, and eventually get some sort of a SUNY degree.
Yeah.
I want someone that's clear yet what institution, and maybe we create a new
Yeah.
SUNY degree.
Well, I don't know that that's not necessarily
thinking
part of
ahead.
this, but I'm just saying that they're behind it and they're really trying to make it happen. In addition, the university provost, the SUNY provost, is going to provide training and information sessions, resources to support campuses engaging in these and engaging how to engage business and industry partners. If they don't have a continuing, some campuses don't have continuing education. So this is moving. And again, these documents, including the trustee resolutions, again, at that same website there on SUNY's main page. So now I'm going to tell you about what we did for FACT2 micro-credential new group and the resources you have if you want to go in and really investigate more. Because some of the answers to questions that you may have are going to be there.
Okay.
And you can educate yourself more with more webinars and stuff like that on your own time if you'd like. And then I'll tell you quick about SUNY Oswego, and we only have like 5 minutes for this. So we were charged to kind of create these tools for people to be able to, number one, have a common language to talk about things, and also to provide people with a community of support of other people who are around SUNY who are trying to create micro-credentials. And then finally, and most importantly, to understand what's already happening and what the best practices are. I'm going over this quick. So the next piece is, like I said, you're collecting and documenting information. developing those educational resources, and creating a community. I was very proud of this one as well, and I'll pause on this for a sec. We had more than 24 people, and I think it ended up being something like 32 in the end. They were all across SUNY, community colleges, state system, SUNY, state ops, research are ones. You had people who were all different types of titles, administration, faculty, instructional designers, librarians, continuing ed. We all got together to kind of accomplish the FACT2 mission. And so the first thing we did is FACT2 has a annual symposium on microcredentials. It was held November 3rd, 17, last fall. And so even though we didn't have all of our deliverables created, we started the conversation about what are microcredentials. We had people from SUNY system come. We had people from different campuses who are already doing microcredentials come to explain what they do. And then, so it included background, definition, and policy guidance from SUNY System Administration, and a presentation by Jonathan Finkelstein, who is the CEO of Credly. So he came and talked about national and international status of microcredentials. There were examples of microcredentials, badges that are already at work in SUNY, as well as how to ensure academic quality and integrity of microcredentials, a key concern of faculty. And so right there you see is the link. That's the FACT2 website. All the presentations of the day are there. There's also video of different pieces of the day as well, so you can go there and learn a lot of information. And then next off, the group came up with, and I'm waiting to advance the slide because Karen's writing it down. Okay. So the task force, when we did start meeting, we ended up coming up with a lot of outcomes that we wanted to create. 3 themes. We wanted tools and frameworks, educational resources, community of practice, and you can see what's underneath there. And I'm going to quickly delve into each of these, what we finished with. The first was a vocabulary resource list. This list had all sorts of information like advice for getting started, links and examples, other organizations' resources, how it can link to experiential learning and prior learning assessment, because they're at the other side of this coin, frankly, bibliography of research and so on. What you see right there is the link to all of that work that is available. By the way, all of these items we are packaging and sending as a formal final report to the FACT2 committee, who will then recommend it to the Provost office, who will then put them up on their website. That same website, the same URL I gave you a couple times. So we also created an academic quality rubric. So it is quite an in-depth rubric, so it can be used to design these microcredentials. There are 5 main themes in this rubric. Alignment with your college mission is #1, because again, you're not trying to be everything for everybody. You're trying to be what fits with your institution. That there is support within your own college for the microcredential. Remember, we talked about how everybody throughout the entire institution needs to be on board, and you need to treat these people as the same as any other credit-bearing student. That the academic quality is there. That there's professional development for those who are working on it, so that they understand how this is evolving, and evaluation. We created a communications plan because, as we all know, SUNY is this massive thing, and sometimes information gets out there and it might go only to the academic dean or the CAO, provost of an organization, and stop there. We wanted to make sure it got to as many people as possible, and we created a plan that we recommended to SUNY. Under educational resources, we had 2. One was, and this is going to be key, it's kind of out of order, but it's the way it was. All of our things that we created, we wanted to package in a self-paced online learning module that you can take on your own to learn about microcredentials, so you get access to all these resources, and then in the end, to get your very own badge. So you know exactly what the badge means and does. So a lot of your questions, Josh, would be answered about, well, what does it look like? How would somebody get this information? And so just logically, you had to develop all these other things first before this could be completed. So this isn't completed yet. This is roughed out in terms of a competency model and a learning objectives and so on. It needs to be finalized, and they will. They plan to, and then post it on that website.
Like in a way, sort of similar to what we do with human resources, and we say we've learned about the violence in the workplace rules. I mean, just saying going through it, but yeah. Places to say I've done it. Now you envision, and this is part of need to get it out there so everyone can get informed, and we'd be required that everybody has to kind of go through this tutorial.
When wouldn't be required.
Encourage.
Okay, encouraged.
Invited.
Invited is probably the right way to say it, because think about,
They were there.
you want to know about micro-credentials and what do you do, where do you go? You probably do this on your own and to get up to speed and to find out who could you even call, you know? The other thing we did is we did a whole bunch of professional development webinars. Those are the 7 right there. They are all recorded, and if you go to that link, you can go watch any of them at your own time. They are going to be embedded within that self-paced online module as well. But we had the nuts and bolts of micro-credentialing, which is a lot of what we talked about today. And then each of those institutions talk about what they're doing already with micro-credentialing. And there are very different examples of how each of them is doing micro-credentialing. And then in the end, it was, okay, now what? Now you're ready to go. What do you do next? And so all of those are at that link. And you can go and find out more about that. Again, it's going to be embedded in that self-paced online learning module. And then the last 2 things that we did were under community of practice. We created a workplace forum. So you know how SUNY went to this internal Facebook, kind of like a SUNY intranet bit? This is an open group. If you want to be part of it, connect with other people who are doing things with micro-credentials, get on the feed for new, fun, different things about micro-credentials. All you have to do when you log into Workplace is find it. It's called Badging and Micro-Credentialing. Unfortunately, I wish we could change the name, but it's done. It's Badging and Micro-Credentialing. And all you have to do is click a button to request access. What's that?
You can change it.
I could?
I think,
I'm not an administrator. An administrator, Alex is.
Oh, well, you can ask Alex.
Yeah. So that's the view of that website. Here it is again, the SUNY system website. Because the other thing we were creating is a website. This is the short way. This is the way you can remember it. SUNY.edu/micro-credentials. Because that has, you can see the links on there to the full-on report, to the shortened report here. No, wherever it is. And then there's here it's highlights to the trustees policy, to other different things. And then right now they do have a link to those professional development webinars that have been recorded, but I don't think it's updated all the way. This is upcoming, and that's not the right wording. I just took that the other day. Okay, final slide. I know we're already 2 minutes over 2, but I want to tell you what we're doing at SUNY Oswego for micro-credentials right now. So I've been talking about it quite a bit with people just in general about creating an academic micro-credential. And that's what I'm going to start calling it, I think, versus like a community participation kind of micro-credential. I'm going to say this is an academic micro-credential, just until we, as we go, figure out what we're going to say. So the folks in Schema really wanted to create one, and this one we're moving forward with. And the Provost has decided this, the deans have decided this, everybody's behind it. We are creating a micro-credential in strategic digital and media design. It started with Julie Pretzat had her advisory committee meeting, and she had a number of board members who are also alumni, who also own companies and hire a lot of our graduates, say, your degree is exactly the way it should be for broadcasting or I can't remember which one. Leave it. But we have need for certain other, competencies. Where if they also had this, that would make me hire them even more. And so they can't embed it in their degree because their degree is already chock full of what needs to happen in their degree. It is a leg up in the work world. Those people are saying even people who are alums could benefit from having this. And it would really be meaningful in the work world. So we start out with testimonials from those people who are hiring. And these people, by the way, are from Central New York, Western New York, and New York City. Perfect, great situation. It is, and as we talk about it again, if you are a student and you want to add it, let's do it for credit, because it might help them with their graduation requirements. But if you are an alum, you don't want credit, right? You want the skills. You could also take it for non-credit. So we're designing it so that you have both audiences have this opportunity. We're going to do a weekend in-person launch, probably in Syracuse, so that again, if you're in New York City, sure, come on up to Oswego. So it's potentially portable. Somebody from outside of our area, doesn't have to be somebody in Oswego. 4 courses, they're already created. The courses are COM 200, COM 201, COM 202, and then COM 211 or Broadcasting 223. There's something we're still trying to finalize a lot of this. But the 4 courses are already created. They've already been through their own governance to be created, right? And so they have seats. They're not full, so there's not a resource implication. We're going to offer it at the Syracuse campus, but eventually we're also going to offer them in Oswego and online. So this will have utility for people to choose the way that fits their schedule, how they can progress. We have talked about it quite at length with the department chairs involved and with Dean's Council and the Provost, and we have decided that a faculty advisory committee should be created because it has credit. But probably it's got to be the people that have already been discussing it, frankly. The two chairs, the schema dean, myself, maybe one or two other faculty. And frankly, just because we want to make sure we follow the governance process so that faculty are comfortable with what this is, how, and have an opportunity to consider it, we're going to unofficially follow the process of creating a minor. Even though we don't have to, SUNY says we don't have to have anything approved, and there is no formal approval process, we are going to bring it through those steps anyway to make sure people understand what it is and feel comfortable with it. Finally, so that's one example of what we're doing with micro-credentialing at SUNY Oswego right now. There are other examples in play of micro-credentials. John offers professional development badging and through CELT, and you have Gary Morris is interested from Career Services because he does a lot of things with students. We have yourself. You were talking about the global engagement badging. It may not be the same thing, but that's okay because then at least you know what the differences are.
Wouldn't be entirely able to be completed online.
Yeah,
that's the concern.
But it doesn't have to be
though. All you need is some way of triggering it.
Right.
And it could be if you have a grade book in Blackboard, it could be
Yeah.
done by that when certain things occur. It could be done manually.
Yeah, yeah. So this is just how we're designing this one. This does not mean that all of them have to do this at all. But we have begun a contract with Credly for badging software. The cool thing is SUNY has negotiated this introductory kind of unlimited rate that we can, so therefore we can create badges in all different types of things.
Ulysses been used working on a particular one?
Is Ulysses on this? No.
Strategic digital media.
No. Although I think one of his courses is one of the ones they
Does the integrated certificate?
Yeah. I don't know. So there is, even though I just have this on this slide, this is just one example. So we have an opportunity in the college to do more, all sorts of different kinds of things. In fact, Greg was talking to somebody who was interested in putting together a lean manufacturing micro-credential, or just non-credit. And we have some MOOCs out there, potentially this could kind of come under the MOOC piece. So that's really it. Sorry, this was a slide left over from another presentation, but that's it. And I'm happy to answer any
If you
questions.
want to apply or propose one, is there a way to do that?
We don't have a formal process right now. I talked to the provost a lot about this, saying we need to figure this out, and we kind of fixated on this one example to try to pave the way. But like I said, I'm going to be proposing to him that we put together a council on micro-credentials.
Well, I mean, maybe we could be included. This is really out of the Institute
Yeah.
for Global Engagement.
Yeah.
We're trying to create this with the available tools, but in the time we've had this discussion, this is emerging. So I'd rather it go through proper campus formation and governance than do our own thing.
Well, to me, I think you have to figure out again what you're trying to accomplish. If it's that all students have a global engagement piece, that's a different thing than a micro-credential.
No, it wouldn't be through a set combination of academic and credit and non-credit experiences. The student can leave SUNY Oswego. Our thought was at graduation, now sort of not that they would be certified by SUNY Oswego to be globally engaged. And there's a component of exposure to it. There's a lot of components.
Yeah, no, then it does sound like it works. It just is.
We thought of like almost a point system.
Yeah. You just need to have a rubric.
Recheck.
Yeah.
These things get these points.
When do they earn?
We have the academic structure with the Institute for Global Engagement to receive this, really almost like an honors program, certified. Yeah, this student has gone through this.
Yeah, I think it's essential. Yeah,
so
it has potential.
we could be part of this conversation.
Okay. Yeah.
And anticipating the transferability of these from one institution to the next, it looked like it was really SUNY-wide. So as long as it's
I don't know about
That's early.
transferability
There's
per
discussions
institution,
of that.
but you're welcome.
It's really preliminary discussions.
Yeah, but we're not mature enough to really talk about that
Okay.
yet.
All right.
What they mean by transferability is that it actually, like, that if you're getting a credential, that it's part. So for instance, that credit one that we're talking about, would that be able, as a credential, to be taken within another degree program so that it can transfer and be part of another degree program. So you're building, it's stackable.
Okay, and that's
Right.
within, as soon as we go, is transfer.
Yes, so right now.
And
it's
that
all
may
about-
change. It's
Yes.
possible that that may become across SUNY, that there may be some commonality where there's some cross acceptance of these things, but that's,
Looking at transfer.
we're not there
students,
yet.